What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Player Profiler. Today, we're going to be tackling some major injury updates, some trade news. Joining me today is Steve Average Joe _FF, who's always here to bring great insights. Together, we'll dive into the DeAndre Hopkins news, the Chris Godwin season-ending ankle injury, how it shapes the Buccaneers offense with Mike Evans stepping into a larger role. Can he deliver? But also, he's going to be missing some time. So that wide receiver room is in flux. Also, the San Francisco 49ers. There's a lot to cover. And today I got Steve here with me. Steve, welcome to the show. You want to tell all our viewers and everybody where they can find all your stuff and kind of what you do for Player Profiler?
Yeah, so I've been doing some of the blurbs out there covering the Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens. So anything that you guys see updated for those two teams, fantasy or NFL news related, I will be putting out stuff. So make sure you guys check that out. I am at X at Average Joes _FF. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, different sites, just to get some of my insight throughout the season and off season. I love doing redraft and dynasty. So it's something I've been really hyped up about. I mean, football is year round. I don't think it ever slows down for us. So it's always fun. So you can check me out there.
Awesome, man. Well, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you on. And Steve's going to be a more familiar face here on the news desk on the Player Profiler Day. We're hoping to have him have his own weekly slot show. So look for him more frequently, and we're just kind of easing him into the situation here. So let's get into one of the top stories here. We had some news actually break lately, and we'll probably talk about Puka Nacua starting right away. But there is some big news here, and the Chiefs, they traded for veteran wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins from the Tennessee Titans. Many speculated that the Chiefs, who had been hesitant to invest in a wideout over the age of 30, would stay the course. However, the Titans struggling at 1-5 and the Chiefs facing season-ending injuries to key receivers like Marquise Brown and Rashee Rice. Analysts have long connected the dots between Hopkins and Kansas City. So, Steve, what do you think this trade means for the Chiefs' Super Bowl chances this season?
I think it only continues the path. I mean, at this point, I don't think anybody was ever concerned, even if they didn't get DeAndre Hopkins, that the Super Bowl champs could potentially still be the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, that team, I think people have to understand this team has now become a defensive team. Like, this is what this team has become. It's not the offense. It's not Mahomes, even though he has not played to his standard. They're still winning. Like, the Kansas City defense is and needs to get the credit that they're well deserved. But adding Hopkins, a veteran who I don't expect to be outstanding. He's not Tyreek Hill as far as that, go down the field. He's going to be the presence to help. I think realistically, Travis Kelce being the big winner out of this. Kelce is obviously being, double teamed, in some cases triple teamed. And I think this is a big benefit because, you had Juju Smith-Schuster, who had one good game and then got hurt. Like, they're just, losing players left to right at the outside. So I think it's a big thing. I still think it matters. Even if, Hopkins is dealing with the MCL issue going on, I still think he makes a big impact. And this Super Bowl, the opportunity is still there. Nothing's changed for me. I think it slightly increases for sure.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you there. And I agree with your situation. I don't think he's going to be the most prolific wide receiver, but he adds that veteran presence who's going to step in right away and probably not take too long to get assimilated with that offense. So, for that trade, it helps his fantasy value because before the deal, he was sitting at wide receiver 54 as of Fantasy Pros rest of season rankings. But this should catapult him probably in wide receiver 3 territory, maybe higher. Patrick Mahomes at the helm. There's been a gaping hole with the injuries. We talked about that. So how high do you think this makes, climbs up Hopkins in the wide receiver rankings after joining the Chiefs here?
I think he can get, again, it might take a few games, but I think he can fall into that wide receiver 30 to 35 at the end of the season. I think realistically, I think he's going to be a low wide receiver 2 with a wide receiver 3 safe floor. And I do think, again, like we talked about how this can impact obviously everybody else, but I think his ranking definitely moves up. I put him into the 30 to 35 range. I think that's where he falls in that sweet spot. He could obviously surprise us. I mean, he's a veteran. This guy knows his routes. He knows his defenses. He knows, one of the most sure-handed players in the game. and he can always break it out. Look what he did last year with Will Levis, where we all thought he was dead in water, and bam, he just had one of the best games he had in a while. So he could obviously make me look like a fool here, but I think in that wide receiver 30 to 35 range.
Okay. Yeah. I'm probably on board with that. I wouldn't be overly optimistic about his age and coming in here and being like a number one kind of guy. Like he's going to gain those targets and he's going to help that offense in general, keep the ball moving. And they've, like you said earlier, their defense has been prolific. They haven't need to, win games based off the offense. And they haven't, and they played teams like Baltimore and Cincinnati. Granted, it was earlier in the season. They haven't even played their best football yet. And it's about to go down. So we'll see what happens there. So as far as the ripple effect from this trade, fantasy gamers should tread carefully with this Chiefs wide receiver room. You mentioned that this might help out Travis Kelce. What do you see this happening for other wide receivers in that room, particularly maybe Xavier Worthy? He's coming off the bye, getting a lot more snaps. Do you see this being a benefit for him now that, maybe taking some of that pressure off the rookie?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's a benefit in both Kelce and Worthy because Kelce realistically he can still cover the middle. Hopkins can also be in the middle, can make, the intermediate passes as well, where it allows Worthy to kind of take the defense off the top, allows him to be open because he's not the biggest guy. He's not the best route runner. He's more of that gadget performer that obviously can get you down the field. And I think for him, it now forces teams to really focus that intermediate middle range between Kelce and Hopkins. And now you put a corner one-on-one or maybe a safety who's doing a cover two has to now deal with Worthy. And if you're a safety, do you pick Worthy who can go down the field or do you have to deal with Kelce down the seam? And for me, if I'm a defensive player, you always got to take the deepest player. And that just opens up the window for Kelce across because, again, you've got to deal with that. You've got guys who are going to have to obviously play the intermediate route a lot more often where I hate to say it, Worthy's more of that one trick pony. And this is going to, I think, absolutely open up everything for these guys.
Yeah, agreed. And this is a good move. It's a savvy move. They didn't have to go out and get him in free agency and pay all that money. They got him in a trade. They didn't have to give up many draft picks. So the Chiefs just get richer in their riches. And, if you want to get rich in your riches, join the Player Profiler fan base here, where you're going to get a lot of the great tools, including our player rankings. So let's hear from the Podfather and what's coming down the streamline here.
Oh, every week I'm answering these start-sit questions on Sunday morning. I go to the weekly rankings on playerprofiler.com just to make sure that my instincts are correct, and sometimes they're not. And guess what? More often than not, I go with the projections. You may not feel great about starting Daniel Jones or Wan'Dale Robinson, but the projections say, hey, that's the move. It may not feel right, but you use those projections to get it right. That's the power of the Player Profiler system. It's Evan Ringler, it's Bradley Stalder, it's Theo Greminger, of course, it's Billy Muzio making these rankings possible. The season rankings, so you know who to pick up, who to trade for. The dynasty rankings are part of this. The offensive line rankings from Dan Fornick, one of the best in the business. Then we get our cornerback rankings, which show which corners are matched up with which wide receivers. And now, in collaboration with the IDP show, we have IDP rankings. Did you know that? Did you? So go to playerprofiler.com, use promo code PODFATHER. Get you 25% off the player rankings package right now at playerprofiler.com. Enjoy!
Yeah, let's enjoy that. Those rankings are top notch. They get updated daily. So those of you that are, contributors and that, have a membership, you're reaping the benefits just like I am and Steve. So let's move on to the next story here. The San Francisco 49ers now without Brandon Aiyuk. It looks like Debo is going to be out as well. This situation further complicates by the fact that Christian McCaffrey is still on the mend. Now, Ricky Pearsall saw quite a bit of work in the game last week. Same with Jacob Cowing. How do you see Pearsall and Cowing's potential impacting fantasy lineups moving forward? And which one did you prioritize on the waiver wire this week?
So, I went through this trying to figure out what player, if I needed one, because obviously you still had Juwan Jennings, but he's also dealing with an injury. So looking at those options, I went the Pearsall route because one, the draft capital matters. Teams who make a pick that high on a player truly believe in him. They believe in the talent. They believe in what they even the most boneheaded GMs and hard-headed will always play their first round, second round picks over anyone else sometimes. And I'm not saying Pearsall is not that guy. I think he has the ability to, and he obviously had a lot of people looking for him around that type of, area in the draft. So I liked him a lot. Now I'm curious because this was his past weekend first game after the shooting unfortunate, thing that had happened during the offseason. Glad to see that he came out of that healthy and that nothing serious had happened. But I think he takes the biggest benefit. And I think a part of it is the matchup. I hate to say it, this is actually a good matchup for Pearsall to come into. Going against Dallas Cowboys. They're not going against, a dominant defense because the Cowboys, let's be honest, have not been dominant on defense this year. So I think for a team like the 49ers who have had a mental, just stranglehold of the Cowboys, this is a good first game of Pearsall being the wide receiver one in getting comfortable and getting more familiar with Purdy. Now, if Juwan Jennings does play, which obviously we'll have to keep an eye on, I think he will be the star out on the outside because of that comfortability with Purdy, and he's been in this offense for a while. But I love the move for Pearsall. I think this is his time to shine. It's going to really prove what he can do, and I'm super excited. And I think this is the perfect matchup for him.
Yeah, I like that call as well. I wasn't super high on Pearsall because of some of the metrics that I value highly, and I think that Jay McCowan excels in some of those. But I just see the situation in the 49ers offense, and like you mentioned, this matchup versus the Cowboys is definitely going to play to his strengths, and we're gonna have to see if that gunshot wound is gonna deter him from excelling in a high manner. And I think it's not going to matter. I think the 49ers are going to have to get somebody the ball, and until Christian McCaffrey can come back, it has to be a guy like with the athletic profile that Pearsall has. So I agree with you there. Let's move on. There's some situations here. The reality is stark. Aiyuk is likely a high draft pick, making his injury more particularly damaging. While the waiver wire always has those options, finding players who can deliver similar production at this stage of the season is no easy feat. The 49ers struggles suggest that fantasy managers have to consider avenues. We talked about Pearsall, we talked about Cowing, but Juwan Jennings here, is he a guy that could be a league winner down the stretch, do you think here?
I mean, he's got that familiarity with the offense. So, he's being in a Kyle Shanahan offense for a while. He obviously is comfortable with Purdy. He does reap the benefits of a healthy Kittle when he's in the lineup because he's got the middle. Jennings showed he can play, right? He had that amazing 46-point performance earlier this season.
Yes.
So he has the capability of it. I don't think he's the long-term answer. I think Pearsall does become the guy. I think everyone went after Jennings when it came to the waiver wire this week. I think everyone's fab money went there. I think everyone went crazy on the waiver wire. I actually recommended Pearsall because I think he would have been a cheaper cost, and I think he ends up being the guy who takes advantage of the 49ers' lack of availability at the wide receiver position. Now, Debo will be back. Obviously, he's dealing with the pneumonia and the fluid in the lungs, so glad he's healthy. So he will be back, and then I think it actually ends up being Debo and Pearsall, and then Jennings on the other side, which I think is the perfect scenario for Jennings. I think Jennings in the slot and moving Pearsall back and forth as well, I think actually benefits both guys. Now, if I'm a Aiyuk owner, I am probably looking away from any of the 49ers wide receivers unless I can get somebody like a Debo. I'm looking at other players like Jerry Jeudy, who might take a benefit of a Jameis Winston now at wide receiver because Judy's been available in a lot of leagues. Even Cedric Tillman I mentioned before, and out there. That I think there's some other options that you can go on other teams that have some great availability. Even Lockett, who may have to step up with Metcalf dealing with his injury. So I would kind of stay away from Aiyuk owner, kind of stay away from those guys. But I think Jennings is worth a week or two stash, and then lean on Pearsall the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think so too. And I like what you said about going elsewhere outside of the 49ers, wide receiver room, because there is a lot of uncertainty there, and we don't know what the impact and how high flying that offense is going to be without Aiyuk and potentially a banged up Debo. Now let's move on to, Chris Godwin, season-ending injury. Now we just heard word today that Mike Evans is going to miss some significant time. This Buccaneers offense was hitting on all cylinders. Now you got a situation where you might see a guy like Sterling Shepard come in and be a nice safe floor play, but you got a guy like Jalen McMillan who, a lot of people were highly valued him in the waiver wire this week, myself included. I think he's going to have a good upside there, taking on that slot. Who do you say is likely to see more targets out of those two, Sterling Shepard or Jalen McMillan? But can they provide consistent production that the Buccaneers need?
I look at that room. You've got Shepard, you've got McMillan, and you also have Trey Palmer.
Trey Palmer, yeah.
I think people have forgotten about him. I think McMillan is the shiny new car. I think everyone wants to see what he's capable of. He was great in Washington. You saw in the Monday night game, even before the Mike Evans and Godwin injury, they moved McMillan around a lot. They used him on reverses. He was playing a lot of the outside because Godwin typically dominates the inside. So I am curious how they're going to play out. I expect the offense to kind of move McMillan on the outside where Evans is, and they'll put Shepard in the slot. Just because of his size and where he's comfortable at. If that is going to happen, and we'll see how this game plays out, Shepard, I think, is the one who dominates in the targets because this offense was geared towards Godwin first.
Yeah.
Like McMillan is going to be the big play guy. McMillan's going to be the one probably scoring the touchdowns. McMillan will be a factor in this offense. But if you're looking for a safer floor, Shepard will probably be the safer floor. He's going to be the guy getting 8 to 10, targets his way. Maybe he scores a touchdown here or there, but if you're looking for the upside, obviously McMillan is going to be in that Mike Evans role, and he will absolutely be the upside guy for sure.
I mean, he did play a lot of slot in college as well, so he has that versatility that he could play there. And I know that Sterling Shepard might get the first crack at that slot role, but I'm hoping to see McMillan, progress himself there because I think I see a lot of upside there for him. And it sounds like you're on the same page there. All right, let's talk about Baker Mayfield because he's been brilliant this year. He has to adjust now life without his top playmakers, at least for a couple of weeks. Defenses can now focus more on Mike Evans when he returns and potentially making it harder for Baker Mayfield to find success. Do you think he is with his trend moving forward without Godwin, is he now out of the top 12 quarterback? Is he now more of a streaming player, based off matchup now?
Yeah, unfortunately, I hate to say he's kind of fallen to the matchup quarterback. He's someone who's going to have to deal with, a really good, juicy matchup where the secondary struggles or, they can be up big. I think for Baker, he was getting really comfortable in this offense. Now, I am curious, because of his comfortability and his confidence in those two receivers, can he get that in both Shepard and McMillan? I do have some concerns. I actually have Baker in a few of my leagues because he was just falling out of his mind, and I, set him and forgot him. That was how comfortable I felt with him in my fantasy lab. Now at this point, there are a lot of second guesses. It is going to be based off matchups, in my opinion. I do think he does have some comfort in K. Dotton. I think Rashad White's going to benefit a lot of this. He saw 6 receptions in the Monday night game. They could use him as a wideout, maybe put Sean Tucker at running back. I mean, I'm very curious how this Bucs offense really pulls this together. But I do think Baker at this point, I would still hold on to him. He's going to have value towards the end of the season, but I'm really hesitant to start him every single week.
I know, and that's unfortunate because he was, like you said, a set and forget it kind of quarterback, playing lights out. And you know what? This might be his test that we need. And if he could still keep up that type of production, wow, Baker Mayfield is it could be a league winner. And he's been very, very advantageous if you had him in your lineup. And it just sucks to see what happened. It was a last second play too to happen with Godwin. It's just unfortunate. Let's maybe move on to some. Let's get into Lamar Jackson because I think that was a really good game he had, and he's solidifying himself as the clear cut, in my opinion, QB1. Steve, after his performance, 5 touchdowns, do you think there's a QB in the league that could take down his crown at this stage? Because I don't.
So going into the season, I still had Josh Allen as my QB1. I felt like he still had the rushing ability to make it happen. And I hate to say it because I think Jared Goff and Burrow are probably the better passers at this moment of the NFL season. But when you're talking fantasy and you're talking that ability to run and things like that, Lamar Jackson is so hard to compete with. I mean, Baker Mayfield was QB2. He was getting there. But it just, the concern is now there's no other real rushing threat outside of maybe Kyler Murray when it comes from the quarterback position, and Kyler Murray is nowhere near the tier of a Lamar Jackson. So I don't think there's anybody. If anybody was going to be, it's still Josh Allen. I think the add-on of Amari Cooper is such a big deal. It is going to be huge. I mean, he scored a touchdown on a play. He had no idea what route to run. And that says a lot about, one, himself, two, the offense obviously helping each other out. So he still has he's probably the closest to it. But realistically, if you were able to draft Lamar Jackson, as long as he stays healthy, is going to be a league winner for sure.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's like, there's a couple of guys that I'm just really, really regretting not getting more shares of. Like I was a little light on some of these players, especially like Lamar Jackson or Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, 4 guys that I'm just really like, okay, I'm a little lightweight on these guys. I should have been a little bit more, confident in these veterans, and I just wasn't. So, I wish I was a little bit heavier on that.
Yeah, I think everyone. I think anybody who didn't draft Derrick Henry is kicking themselves for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Because it was all the signs were pointing for Barkley and Derrick Henry to kind of shine. And I was a little bit off on that one, but I just think that Lamar Jackson MVP candidacy is gaining steam. Fantasy gamers should be thrilled with his production. The combination of his arm strength, which is, his accuracy now, his ability to extend plays just makes him an unparalleled asset, like we talked about. So I just don't think anything is going to happen as far as dethroning him unless an injury happens. So yeah, I'm right on with you, Steve. Steve's done a great job tonight. And folks, if you're enjoying the show, don't miss out on more exclusive content. Subscribe to the Player Profiler YouTube channel at profiler_news. Follow us on Twitter at profiler_NFL and on our website, www.playerprofiler.com/news for all the latest and breaking news and its impact on fantasy football. Now, let's get into the Thursday night primer here there, Steve, and then we'll get our viewers home to, get nestled in and ready for the game. Now, we got a pretty interesting matchup here because we just heard some interesting news this afternoon. We know that Cooper Kupp is now playing, but surprising now, Puka Nacua coming into the lineup. Surprise move. What's your initial reaction about that? Are you really surprised that Puka's playing tonight?
They always said the timeline was about week 8 to 9 for him. So I don't know if I'm necessarily surprised. I think most of these teams are smart with their players, right? Like, he's a young player. They believe he's going to be the future, of this team on the outside. And I don't think they're forcing him in at all to go out there and risk it. Like, I think if they feel he can play, they feel he can play. Like, I think, don't get me wrong, every player is pushing to play. There is a good chance that Nacua has gone in there nudging the coach and nudging, Sean McVay and say, hey, put me in. Because obviously the Rams are not the Rams. They have not played well. Their defense is not the same. Stafford is trying his best with the receivers he's got, but having Nacua there, I think, is great. Now, I will say this. I am not putting him in any of my fantasy lineups at this point because I don't trust. There's always that re-injury factor when it comes to something like this, but I will say having Cooper Kupp there, I think, is big. That's going to be your main focus. Puka might have a couple catches here and there just to kind of get himself back in there. They won't force him, but I do feel I trust the move. I trust the move of the Rams. Sean McVay is not going to put his player out there to get hurt. I mean, there's all the rumblings of obviously Cooper Kupp possibly getting traded, and maybe this is the game for him to show up, and then they'll feel what kind of conditional picks they might get for him. But I do trust it. If you're desperate, maybe you're a team that had a Nico and a Brandon Aiyuk, and you're really desperate. Yes, you're going to play Puka. I would be very, very cautious though.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he's one of the guys that you've been waiting for, and I think nobody was really expecting him to even get suited up this week. So people are like, last minute scrambling, trying to figure out where they fit in here. And, I think this is a effort maybe the Rams are going to see tonight whether or not they can make a push at the playoffs, because they're not, they're 2 games out of first place. They see the 49ers now pretty banged up. The
Yep.
Cardinals haven't shown anything, and Seattle's been so up and down. They look like the team maybe to beat now in that division. And with Cooper Kupp coming back, with Puka Nacua coming back, Kyron Williams, running on all cylinders, maybe this is their shot. And if they don't win tonight, then they pack the bag and send Cooper Kupp packing. So that could be a reality here. Now let's talk about the Vikings here, Steve, because they have been a very, very, Cinderella story, if you will, to start the year. Sam Darnold has been playing lights out. They went toe-to-toe with a very, very good Detroit Lions team last week in Minneapolis. What a game that was for fantasy managers. What do you see here for Sam Darnold moving forward? Are you buying into the hype here? And how do you see his season finishing?
I still think he's a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year. I think I understand his name has such a weight for fantasy owners and NFL fans. They're not sure what to do with Sam Darnold. It's funny because I'll do a waiver wire content and I talk about it every single week, and I feel like every single week I say, go grab Sam Darnold. Like, you've got to believe in his ability. He was drafted in the first round for a reason. I do believe O'Connell as his head coach was a huge factor, being a previous quarterback. And then you've got obviously great wide receivers in Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Naylor's looking great. And they're getting Hawkinson back next week. They were hoping for this tonight, but he's back next week. It's already been officially announced. And then, of course, Aaron Jones is such a huge factor back there. Sam Darnold doesn't have to be the guy. I think of players like back in the day where you had, quarterbacks that were either controlled by their defense, right? We talk about defenses that are winning the games for them. They just have to play smart, or you just have some outstanding talent around them. And Sam Darnold's got that outstanding talent. Not to take anything away from Brock Purdy, but Brock Purdy has outstanding talent around him, and he's been a fantastic fantasy quarterback. Now will be the biggest challenge for him, and we like to see where he's at in the next few weeks without his top talent. But Sam Darnold, we've seen him without great receivers. Now we're seeing him with great receivers. And I think I'm not afraid of him. I have him in a lot of lineups. I know this is, again, a quarterback that sometimes based off matchup could be a factor, but I think realistically, he's almost a quarterback like Baker where you can set and forget and feel really confident that he's going to get you, in that top 10 range for sure.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Steve. As far as what my analysis was on Sam Darnold, I am happy to have him in a lot of dynasty leagues. I think he's now, a top 15 dynasty play. It doesn't even matter because he's proven now he can be a winner. And if the Vikings don't sign him for a long-term contract, which is actually a pretty big reality at this stage, because how could you not? They're 5-1, and they went toe-to-toe with the team that was, a play away from getting into the Super Bowl last year. So I don't see how they could get off of Sam Darnold at this stage, even with JJ McCarthy in the ropes coming in. But those fantasy managers that held on to Sam Darnold are loving it right now in Dynasty because he's going to find a job next year regardless. There's going to be a team that's going to pay him a bag just based off what they saw this year. So good on you. Yeah, man. Steve, man, you crushed it today. We're about a half an hour mark and, we're going to get this show wrapped up. But, man, way to go. What a great show you did. We're going to have you, run your own show on the channel. So tell everybody where they can find you, all your stuff, and, we're a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been doing at least fantasy content for about 4 years now. I've been doing fantasy football probably before dinosaurs started. So it's one of my big passions. Football has been part of my life big time, whether playing, coaching my son's team, things like that. So it's a big part. You can obviously follow me on X at Average Joe's, AVG Joe's _FF. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok. I even have my own YouTube channel as well. If you ever want to check that out, I do some content there. And then of course, check out Player Profiler. I do a lot of the blurbs for any of the Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens, whether it be fantasy insight, news, updates, things like that, just to keep everyone up to date on those teams. Just to, again, give you the edge. That's what we're here for. We want to give you the edge in your fantasy world. There's a lot of different personalities out there. And this is probably one of my favorite. I've been following Player Profile forever now. And I'm glad to be part of the team. I think this is a great site, great content. You guys have been killing it every single time. So I'm glad I could contribute and kind of give my insight as well, from where I see things.
And Steve, you're a big player too, and we're lucky to have you. And you're contributing at a big stage, and you're only rising up the ranks here. So keep it up, man. You're gonna have your own show right away, and we love having you on. And those of you in the chat that were asking some start and sit questions, please move over to the main channel because that's what the Thursday night tailgate's all about. Myself and Biggs will be taking it over in about 5 minutes, so please move over to the main channel and we'll hit up all your start and sit questions for the Thursday night and headed into the weekend right away. We covered the news. Steve did a wicked job tonight and he'll be back. So from all of us here on Player Profiler, thanks for joining. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe and continue to follow us. You'll see us back here, I think, Friday. Biggs will be back with Chev to do Player Profiler today. And from all of us, myself, Steve, we appreciate everybody joining in. And we're here from the Podfather. Peace out, everybody.
See you.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.